Good afternoon, brothers. Is everyone having a good experience here so far? Glad to hear it. Let's try that again. Is everyone having a good experience here so far? All right. That's what we like to hear. Brothers, I want to thank you sincerely for allowing me some time to share with you the direction, the strategic direction of Phi Gamma Delta. And as Brother Blanchard said this morning, leadership is about going somewhere. And my addendum to that is leadership is about going somewhere together. And many of you can probably appreciate, you may have been part of an organization before where you felt like you were laboring in the vineyard on behalf of the organization, but in terms of really understanding where you are going collectively as an organization, you may have felt, as I have at times, somewhat adrift. And my mission with you today for about the next 24 minutes is to share with you this fraternity's vision as expressed by your board of Archons. Now, I don't want to hear any hisses or any nastiness or gnashing of teeth out there. I'm a native New Englander. I grew up in a little small town in Maine. I live in Massachusetts now, and it's hard in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, where I live, not to be a New England Patriots fan. And see, I told you, I knew it was coming. And hiss all you want. What the analogy I want to make is that that team is so terrific for lots of reasons, not the least of which is, you can let it up now, Bill will keep record of who's making the problem here. It's the concept of team. Any leader who tries to create a plan in a vacuum will have his own plan without any buy-in from his fellow leaders. And when we were elected in 2006, I often say to you undergraduate chapter president leaders, in my opinion, there's no greater honor that one can have in life but to have your own peers choose you to lead. Knowing well your faults and failures, knowing your personality and what they're likely to get in your leadership role, they choose you to lead. And those of you, all of you really in the choir, if you will, of Phi Gamma Delta have that experience and that honor, and you can never betray that trust. And I am so blessed to serve Phi Gamma Delta at a time when we are blessed amply with just some tremendous leaders on your board of directors, the Archonate of Phi Gamma Delta. And as we gathered in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, so close to our founding, what better place to go back to our roots and decide who are we, where are we going, how and when are we going to get there. And to gather with these brothers and our highly professional and greatly respected international headquarters staff and challenge one another, as we did over the course of an entire weekend, was just almost an epiphany. It was just such a revealing experience. But out of that came this plan that I'm going to share with you today. So before I go further, I just want to genuinely thank and ask my Archon brethren to stand and be recognized for your role in this plan. Brothers, would you stand? Each of us has a different occupational and avocational background, but we all have a different point of view. What was important at Washington and Jefferson is, and this is very vital, brothers, we didn't set out to say, let's create a plan for the next biennium. We're elected by the ecclesia to serve for the next 2 years. Let's put together a 2-year plan. We all agreed that that's too short-sighted. We asked ourselves a different question with the help of a very able facilitator, and that was, where should and where can Phi Gamma Delta be a decade hence from now, 10 years from now? How do we, as leaders, lay the foundation and the groundwork for a greater Phi Gamma Delta at our 170th anniversary in the year 2018? an entirely different proposition and a much greater challenge. But that's the question we ask. Where will Phi Gamma Delta be in 2018 at our 170th anniversary? And I encourage you undergraduate leaders to look beyond your term of office and recognize that you have some younger brothers on your cabinet or among your officers and committee chairmen who will also succeed you in leadership. Think beyond just that short window of time during which you serve. When we have a retreat as you do, one of the first things you need to do is honestly evaluate your strengths, weaknesses, or opportunities, and you have to take an inventory that's impartial. You have to say to yourselves, let's not kid ourselves, where are we really, and where are we relative to our peers or other baseline standards that you might come up with? Well, it's easy to be proud, as we all should be, of some of this inventory evaluation. We have a composite GPA among 107 chapters of 3.0. That's just astounding. You all should give yourselves a round of clicks for that. If you think about that, it's just amazing. I've had people criticize the fraternity system who aren't fraternity people at times, and they'll say, you know, you all are elitist. And my answer to that usually is, I hope so. I hope we are. I hope we're better than the mean. A 3.0 average on 95% of the campuses in North America is at or above the all-men's average and at or above the all-fraternity average. We're better than the average. And you should all be very, very proud of that. That's something to be very proud of. Our expansion success, I'm going to talk about this a lot more, the growth of Phi Gamma Delta, but we have a demonstrated track record of outstanding success wherever we go. There are about 68 men's national and international fraternities in what they call the National Interfraternity Conference. I don't think it's disparaging to tell you that some of those fraternities tend to expand to places without too much regard for quality control, and they tend to go to places where they may succeed or fail, and they fail at a relatively concerning rate. Our hit rate is nearly 100%. When we in Phi Gamma Delta decide we're going to go to this particular campus and be successful, 99% of the time we will be successful. We do our homework, we go in hard, and we work it very effectively, and that's a credit to our international headquarters staff and the program that they've developed over the last couple of years. We have a leading leadership and alcohol education program. You all are the great beneficiaries of that here at the Academy. Imagine the opportunity to hear Brother Blanchard today, even though it was only audio, to be able to understand, as Bob Albin said, this is a world-renowned speaker, and because you are a brother of his in Phi Gamma Delta, you have the opportunity to sit at his feet and learn and listen. And that's just, what a great, General Rives. I mean, just an amazing presentation. We sat in the lobby last night, some of you may have seen us, until 1 in the morning, and he was just regaling us with stories of his Phi Gamma Delta experience and his military career. And where else do you have an opportunity to meet that quality of individual in an organization where you share common values? It's just such a tremendous opportunity. We have great traditions. I can tell you, I know, as some of you know, I have a lot of contact in the interfraternal world, and I can tell you, speaking to my colleague international presidents, both fraternities and sororities, that we have some tremendous tradition that many fraternities envy, not the least of which is our pig dinner, which always gets that, strange tilt of the head when you first mention it to people. But it's a phenomenal and unique tradition that we'll talk about a little bit more. And finally, we have tremendous respect, and I don't think this is self-serving at all, in the greater Greek community. We know that deans of students on different campuses, when you bring up the name Phi Gamma Delta, it connotes good things. And we should all be proud of that, because that's the legacy of a reputation of good work over 160 some odd years. So we should all be proud of that. Now, I think at least 5 or 6 times during this session thus far, you've heard our brother leaders encourage you to keep it simple, to be minimalist in your approach to your goals and objectives. In other words, often when we try to achieve too many things on the abhorrent list of 12 things, we end up achieving too little. You dissipate your energy. You lose your focus. One of the things I'm so appreciative that all of our Archons collectively agreed to was, let's decide what are the 2 deal breakers if we choose not to address them. In other words, in that 10-year window, how will Phi Gamma Delta be imperiled? In fact, could Phi Gamma Delta's very existence be challenged if we were not to address the 2 most important initiatives? And we really challenged each other on this because I'll be candid about this. I consider it what Bill Zerman used to call family talk, that we've sort of been kidding ourselves institutionally as an organization over the last couple of decades. I say that because we really have not been growing as an organization. We've been sort of status quo, largely because we've had a highly conservative expansion policy. What's different? Well, what's different is that on each of our host institution campuses now, you all know this all too well, there's a very, very low level of tolerance for disciplinary issues, problems, faculty studies, and all the rest of it. In other words, the host institution environment is not quite as inviting always or as tolerant as it once was. So what does that mean? Well, what it means to Phi Gamma Delta is that, and most other national fraternities, is that every year, despite all of our best efforts of our Purple Legionnaires and section chiefs and field secretaries and staff, despite all our best efforts, we tend to lose a chapter or 2 every year. There's no greater sadness in my book, but that will happen. And we were not growing at a rate at one point that exceeded that net loss of chapters. We were basically staying even, and we're going to address that, and we're going to address it powerfully as we go forward. So we decided there are 2 key initiatives that will set the stage for a brilliant future for Phi Gamma Delta. The first is graduate involvement. We are known interfraternally, really, as being a fraternity that espouses loyalty for life. We use the phrase, not offhandedly, not for college days alone, and we really should all drink that in as undergraduates. We've got to do a better job of getting more of our brothers to really live it once they leave the campus, but we know that that's a critical component of the Phi Gamma experience. The challenge, though, is that every one of your chapters, there's not an exception in Phi Gamma Delta, at least to my knowledge, every chapter waxes and wanes over its many years of existence. There is no chapter that is a perennial Cheney Cup chapter. Why is that? The key element, the key component among our best chapters that do contend for our best awards every year is what? It's consistent, quality, dedicated graduate involvement and support. Every chapter changes a collegiate generation every 4 years. And in fact, the officers turn over every year. Imagine running a company where the leadership of that company changed yearly. It's a tremendous organizational challenge. And we address that by having volunteer brothers work with our undergraduate chapters to help maintain continuity over time. Graduate involvement is just absolutely key to maintaining and improving the quality of our fraternity experience internationally. Secondly, growth. I mentioned that we can't kid ourselves about where we are going internationally. I liken this to the chapter when I was a field secretary, or even since when we're chatting in the hallway, and a chapter that's struggling with recruitment may sometimes say, you know, we've got 18 brothers, but we're really close. Great. It's great that you're close, but you could be close, believe it or not, with 70 men too. You just don't have the experience to understand that. And It doesn't mean that every chapter has to be at our average chapter size. What it does mean is that you have to maximize the opportunity for creating critical mass on your campus. And I know that Fired Up and during the recruitment sessions, you're talking a lot more about that. We want you to know that we, as an Archon, as an organization and as an international headquarters organization, we're dedicated to the concept of expanding the influence of Phi Gamma Delta. We agonized at a table about, well, what are we saying we're going to do? Well, again, this is the choir, if you will. We are the leaders of Phi Gamma Delta, so we didn't have to be cajoled probably to be here. But you've got a lot of brothers back home who may require some cajoling at times, an arm around the shoulder or a knee in the behind. And we recognize that the influence of Phi Gamma Delta needs to be expanded. More young men need to have the beauty of this Phi Gamma Delta experience, and that's really what we're all about. When we say that our brothers are loyal for life, what do we say? That we're connected to each other, that we are informed about Phi Gamma Delta, that our graduates are involved in the chapters, that they're committed financially, not just to our educational foundation, although Ben, certainly that's something that we want to have happen, not just to the international fraternity, which has improved every year for the last 5 years, but to your chapters as well. And we need to help you understand what creates that desire on the part of graduates to support you, not only in an advisory capacity, but financially as well. And finally, we need to do a better job, brothers, in each of our chapters of preparing our young men, our pledges and initiated brothers, to be loyal for life. What is the expectation of me when I leave this campus and I go on to my other life? What are the expectations of me, and what are the opportunities for me as a graduate brother in Phi Gamma Delta? When we say connected to each other, this is something that some of you may have more familiarity with than others, but we have graduate chapters and associations across North America. And the truth is, if we define engaged or really active, we probably have somewhere between 20 and 25 graduate chapters in North American cities. Some of you, brothers who might be from Sigma Tau chapter in Seattle, St. Louis, in this very town, and others, they're known as great Phi Gam towns with tons of graduate brothers that are always actively involved and engaged. It has a social benefit for our graduate brothers as a place to really connect with other brothers, not just from your own chapter or in that region, but from chapters all across North America. But our objective is to create a graduate chapter in every city over this next decade, once again, which has at least 200 graduate brothers, and we've identified 75 North American cities. So if you do that math over 10 years, a little over 7 a year, and we are blessed to have aligned a resource to help us make that happen in Bob Bainey, our brother who is Director of Graduate Development now, working for both on behalf of the foundation and the fraternity to help us establish those graduate chapters. Now, what does that do for you, undergraduate brothers? What it does is it creates a pool of interested brothers, graduate brothers, from which we can find more advisory support. Doesn't mean every brother will want to do it, but connectivity at any level is always positive. And so we believe that the really working to expand our graduate chapter base is going to help us immensely. Brothers, I enjoy being with you at so many pig dinners each year, and I know my Archon brethren do as well, and most of you do an excellent job at planning your pig dinners. Some of you don't. Some of you, it seems like it was an afterthought the Tuesday night before. One of the funniest, I had a speech recently at a pig dinner, and brothers were very hospitable. I had a good experience, but I got back home, and I literally walked in the house, and my wife said, "Oh, you got the invitation to the pig dinner you just spoke at today." Great. A little bit behind the curve. It's really planning, and one of the new resources that our international headquarters is offering right now is really a soup-to-nuts planning module that you can access through the international headquarters to help you plan your pig dinner. If I'm a chapter president, newly elected, and I know that I need to have a successful pig dinner in April, and it's now November, and I've just been elected, or December, why wouldn't I take advantage of that service? What a great opportunity to say, hey, Graduate Relations Chairman or Corresponding Secretary, contact Rob Cadill at International Headquarters and find out what's available to us for the pig dinner planning. You may do a wonderful job, you may not need that assistance, but if you do, we have it available to you. And then finally, in the connectivity, you brothers in the undergraduates in the new generation certainly have a tremendous amount of connectivity electronically. We confess to being just a touch behind the curve on that, but we're making up ground very quickly. We're engaging with a third-party provider to really put a powerful, really turbo-driven online networking service available. And you're going to hear a lot more about that in the Friday letter and this spring as well. In terms of being informed about the fraternity, obviously the Phi Gamma Delta magazine is a great vehicle for us. It goes to over 35,000 graduate brothers right now, and at times in certain issues a much higher number. And we've had tremendous feedback about the Phi Gamma Delta. I think you'll all agree, graphically, the quality of the writing has really improved in the last several years, which is not to suggest that it wasn't great before, but it's even better than it was, and it's one of the leading journals in the fraternal world. Through the phigam.org, our website, and the internet, there's a lot of need to align further resources. And brothers, this is one thing. If you have a lot of capability in that area, and many of you do, I've been astounded by some of our chapters' websites. Some of you have just lights-out websites, and you're really to be commended. We would appreciate any input that you have at any time. Feel free to email the headquarters or give us a suggestion, or if one of the Archons or others are visiting, show it off. Show us what you're doing well. Finally, regular newsletters. Brothers, this is the hardest thing. I mean, I know that the print medium isn't the most popular now, but it's really important that we continue to get out that regular mailable piece of a graduate newsletter with good photographs, interesting information. Let me tell you a secret. When you're a graduate, whether you're 2 years out or 20 years out or 50 years out, we may be interested in how the chapter is doing generally in terms of scholarship and recruitment. It's good to see that the chapter house is looking good and you're doing improvements. There's not a lot of interest in the intramural game against the betas in co-ed volleyball and some of the other content that you might be tempted to include. It might be very interesting to all of you. Those graduate brothers, and you'll be one of them soon, are really interested in hearing about their graduate pledge brothers, right? Stands to reason. Try to remember that and maintain at least 70% of the information in your chapter newsletter to be about your graduates. And for goodness sake, every opportunity you get, thank graduate brothers for being involved in doing what they do for you. In terms of involvement, how many of you have what you would consider to be an engaged Purple Legionnaire for your chapter? Raise your hands. See, that's fantastic. How many of you are lying through your teeth? No. It's a right answer for if your PL's here. When we say engaged, we really mean engaged and involved. Brothers, Bill Martin said it earlier today. This is the single most important position, and I include this one, in Phi Gamma Delta. Our primary chapter advisor can make more of a difference with one of our chapters than any other brother in any other position. And we believe that we need to construct this whole support network around an engaged, involved, and dedicated Purple Legionnaire. Now, section chiefs. We talked earlier today. The section chief typically will help us recruit that brother to serve. What's the most important thing? I'm going to give you my personal bias. I think the most important thing that you can do, brothers, in finding or selecting a Purple Legionnaire and allowing him to serve is to say, we don't want you to do this as a lifetime job. We're not asking you to have this for time immemorial. We want you to make a 2-year commitment to us if you can. If the timing is right in your professional and personal life right now to make a commitment to us, we would love to have you. And then he may re-up. Or you may decide, you may sit at his feet and say, you know, we would love for you to serve longer. That's wonderful. But you gotta give that brother a window of time during which he knows he can run with the baton and a time when he can pass it on. I just think that's a very, very important factor in your Purple Legionnaire. We think that each of our chapters needs 5 brothers to serve actively as members of the Board of Chapter Advisors and 5 members of the House Corporation. Now, that doesn't mean that they have corporate, board meetings every other month. What it means is that there are brothers engaged where your chapter needs them most. Let's say, for example, you've got a budgetary issue and you're struggling, your treasurer's struggling to balance the budget, you've had some receivables issues or what have you. Then it's going to be far more important for you to have a graduate brother focused on financial management than it is recruitment if you had a tremendously successful rush the previous semester. We try to make sure that those brothers are plugged in where they need to be and where they can help the most. It's a baseline. If you're on University of South on top of the mountain, you may have 5 graduates within 30 square miles. But if you're in New York City at Columbia, you may have 1,800 or 2,000 brothers in the area. The key is find those brothers and work with your section chief, whose primary job it is to recruit those brothers to be involved. The section chief is the key recruiter. We've tried to simplify that job greatly. Section chief position has always been a very challenging one. The best way to think of it, brothers, is it's sort of like a regional manager in a corporate environment, but it's a volunteer job and the pay's not great. What's great about it is the satisfaction of knowing that if you preside over 3 chapters in your little piece or slice of the world, that you've made a difference as a section chief in helping recruit graduate brothers to actively work with those 3 chapters or 4 chapters in your section. If you do that, and I know you're in a full-on session all day today learning how to do that more effectively, then you're really doing a great service to Phi Gamma Delta in your role as section chief. When we say prepared to be loyal for life, I think you'd all agree with me. We don't do a great job at this, but we're going to encourage all of you to do a better job, and our programming is going to reflect the need to do a much better job of making sure that every brother really understands what is going to be expected of him in his membership in Phi Gamma Delta. And that begins with the pledge program. It begins with the pledge education program where you say, not for college days alone is not just a trite, italicized saying, but it really has meaning. And we want you to understand that when you take the oath of membership, it's a lifetime oath. And that's a very, very important piece of this. Through our graduate relations, of course, that connectivity I mentioned earlier means a lot to graduate brothers. If they hear from you, if they sense appreciation, and I think it was Brother Rives, or it may have been actually Brother Blanchard said this morning, I can tell you, there's nothing more impressive to a graduate brother than Fiji hospitality. Nothing that is more memorable and more impressive than having brothers greet you with a smile and a handshake at the door. And I'll tell you even further, you've witnessed this, I'm sure, on a football weekend or what have you. If you have your graduate brothers there and they're with their family, and you show that family and those children and a brother's wife or fiance or girlfriend real warm Fiji hospitality, you win them all over all at once. It's magical. So don't lose those opportunities to really show great Fiji hospitality as part of the graduate relations program. And then finally, we've got to do a better job. A lot of our seniors sort of check out, right? In their senior year, they're worried about what their next career is going to be, or they're going on to graduate school, and there's a whole lot going on. And we need to embrace that brother who has so much wisdom and experience at that point and say, here's how we think you can help us help this chapter, but we in turn want to help you with your transition on to becoming a graduate brother. And we need to create programming so that maybe you work with a graduate chapter locally to do a career planning type session or a networking opportunity. Anything that will connect those senior brothers with their next life while maintaining a foot in their undergraduate world is going to be very meaningful to them down the road. Now, what can you do? I mentioned pig dinner planning. Please, brothers, plan ahead. Utilize the international headquarters resources. There's good written material as well, and there's great material on the website. Use it. Plan ahead. Many graduate brothers, believe it or not, actually have schedules. My daughter Margot's a freshman at High Point University one day, and I asked her offhandedly, I said, well, what's your long-term plan on that, Margot? And she said, you mean this week or next week? I mean, you know, that's her vision. It's really, really important that you give graduate brothers that date. If you do nothing but send out a postcard that says, save this date with a big pig on it, that'll help. Newsletters to your graduates, chapter website, please make sure that it's graduate friendly. Some of the imagery on some of the sites is a little bit questionable. And graduate brothers do take note of that, believe it or not. So be careful when you think about the publics that you are serving. The principal one is your graduate brothers, and make sure that you don't have anything on your website that you would be embarrassed to show with a graduate brother over your shoulder. Finally, tell your graduate brothers thanks. I'd like to take a quick pause here, let you stretch your legs, but stand up, if you would please, and give a round of applause to all the graduate brothers here that are serving here at the Fiji Academy. Thank you, brothers, each and all. Finally, when you're off in the hinterland, you've graduated and you're on to your next life in Phi Gamma Delta, get involved in a graduate chapter. Join a graduate chapter. Even if you can't, if they have bi-weekly luncheons or monthly luncheons, show up once. Introduce yourself. You'd be amazed at the brothers and the friendships that you'll experience. I've met many brothers out there in Fiji land who have said, I never knew this brother as an undergraduate. I met him at a graduate chapter golf tournament, and we've been friends ever since. So take advantage of that opportunity. Brothers, moving to these two goals, but principally now growth. This fraternity, Phi Gamma Delta, we are institutionalizing this plan. We will have, this is an affirmative statement, we will have, I will be at the Ecclesia, and we better have 170 chapters in Phi Gamma Delta. We have 107 today. We're going to invert those numbers. We're going to have 170 chapters in 2018 at our 170th anniversary. Mark my words. Secondly, we currently have an average chapter size of 54 men. Doesn't mean you have to have 54. If you have 53, it doesn't mean you're subpar. It depends on your campus environment. But Phi Gamma Delta chapters have an average chapter size of 54 men, and we believe that we can ratchet that up to 6 more men per chapter in the next decade. What does that do for us? Well, today we have just under 6,000 undergraduate Fijis on North American college campuses. That'll put us at 10,200. So what? How does that translate to you? More money for programming, better resources, and more of an expanded influence of Phi Gamma Delta across North America. What could be better as a member of Phi Gamma Delta? Why 170? I talked about this earlier. Tougher environment on the campus, or attrition. We want to expand the presence. And when I say we've lost ground to our competitors, this was some of the tough talk, the tough love talk that we had at this retreat. Knowing what I know and what others have been familiar with other fraternities that you would recognize. And Bill, if you'll put up that slide, this will give you some sense of where we are relative to some of our peer fraternities. In the business world, we call them competitors. Some of these you can sort of discount. I won't say which. Tau Cap Epsilon. No, but you can see here. You can see here there's some pretty impressive numbers north of 200 chapters. Now, we didn't set out, and our founders didn't surmise that, one day we want to have 300 chapters. I mean, that wasn't the vision. We wanted a quality experience for Phi Gamma Delta to glisten on the steeple of North America's finest institutions, and that's what we were setting out to do. But understand there are 68 men's fraternities, so we're still in the top 30% of all fraternal organizations, but in point of fact, we're 18th right now, and you see some of your peer fraternities here that were not where they are now just 5 and 6 years ago. And so we said to ourselves, let's not kid ourselves. This is a viable baseline, and we can do better. We think the sweet spot, if you will, is right at that 170 level because, A, as Brother Blanchard said, it's achievable. It's ambitious, but it's achievable with 8 or 9 colonizations as we get closer to the 170th year. But that is where some of our colleague and competitor fraternities are, and that doesn't mean they'll be there then. They may have increased or they may have gone the other way. We don't know that. What we know is what we care about and the quality of our expansion program and that experience. When I said we were at 54, that puts us in the top 25% of all fraternities. I think we should be proud of that, but we know we can do better. The 2 keys to that are to follow the proven practices that you're learning here and that you receive from headquarters all the time, Recruit 365, and improving the pledge retention is the critical piece of that. Now, what is pledge retention? The retention of a pledged brother to an initiated brother is a vital connection. The biggest reason for that is that we exhaust a lot of resources trying to bring that pledge program, those pledge brothers, into membership in Phi Gamma Delta. We don't want to just have that energy dissipated by losing more than, say, 10, 15, or at maximum 20% of those men to attrition during the program. We have to improve that, and we have some really strong feelings about how best to do that. We need the fall pledges to do a better job focusing on their final exams. We have a lot of difficulty with first semester freshman pledges who really struggle academically. It tends to pull our chapter averages down, number one. Number two, it sets them up in a hole for a much tougher road to hoe academically and scholastically as they go forward. And we've recognized, if I put that same list up that I just showed you moments ago about the chapter size of these other fraternities, virtually all of the top 10 fraternities are initiating men in the fall prior to their final exams, and they are having great success with that. And we have a highly traditional fraternity that has not moved in that direction in the past, and we feel it's very, very important that we improve our retention and we work hard to give you brothers the tools of a great program that you can implement in your chapters going forward. We are working right now and have been for 2 years. Prior to this Archonate service, the past Archonate created a task force on pledge education. It's comprised 50%, half the brothers that serve on it are undergraduate brothers. And the concept was, help us create a better pledge education program that we could use virtually universally in Phi Gamma Delta. And we are going to pilot that chapter on 8 chapter campuses this spring. And those brothers are very eager and excited to take this model program and work with it and give us feedback on what they really liked about it, what things they think we still need to tweak and improve, and so forth. It's a very, very well-organized program. Jade Metcalf and his task force has done just a tremendous job and have put a tremendous amount of time into it. It emphasizes academics, and the best practices of many of your chapters were pulled together in order to create this model program. It includes local history and tradition and aligns us with our host institutions. Let me pause there just for a second. Many of our host institutions are trying to direct how and when, and many of you I'm sure have had this experience, how and when we pledge men. And some have deferred recruitment, others insist that you initiate prior to the end of a semester. And what we want to do in Phi Gamma Delta as a leading fraternity is we want to drive that bus. We want to be the ones to decide how we are going to manage our pledge program for our chapters and not have it imposed upon us by our host institution, colleges and universities. So we're taking some leadership on this, and we hope and expect that you all will work with us to help make this happen. What can you do? As I'm starting to wrap up here, brothers, Identify expansion opportunities. Many of you will just over the transom mention, you know, Brother Cotè, why have we looked at such and such a school? Have we looked at University of Miami? You know, I have a friend in my high school who is going to be a freshman this year at DePaul. How do I contact them and let them know that he's coming on campus? So give us those recommendations, but if you know of a campus where you think there's a good, solid Greek system, and knowing what you know, you feel like it's a great opportunity for Phi Gamma Delta, contact Marcus Hitt, our Director of Expansion, or just send an email to International Headquarters and say, hey, brothers, have we looked at this school? Chances are we have, but if we've not, we can give you a report on where we stand relative to that opportunity. Identify friends at prospective schools and send prospect names and share that information more actively. We don't do as good a job of that as we could, and we need to recruit, obviously, 365 all year round. That's how you can participate in this. So what have I said? In essence, you are part, this is a very exciting time to be a part of Phi Gamma Delta. And as I said earlier, it's such a privilege to be working with all of you. Bob Albin and I were chatting a little earlier here, and he said, you know, Buddy, he said, I just get this sense this is a really high-quality group of men in here, and I feel better about this than I have in a long time. And I feel the same way. I sense a lot of energy and excitement. Our board and our international staff are absolutely pulling on the rope in the same direction. I think it makes for great, great things to come in Phi Gamma Delta. So as Brother General Rives said last night, when I say that I am mighty proud to be a Fiji, I am really, together with all of you, mighty proud to be a Fiji. Thank you, brothers.